Asaase Radio,
the voice of our life.
Good energy hits the road with exciting choices to energize your ride, giving you more options to take you further. Watch this space for your choice.
Goil, yeah.
Open everywhere and anywhere I go. I see
Fortune rice. It needs just a little water. The green stone stage and the aroma and taste are delicious. Fortune rice, always on point, just like mom.
Now introducing Fortune Emopa, your tasty Ghana rice for all your rice meals.
This advert is FDA approved.
just like mom.
Now me say, if you bring me who the bia we are active, very strong and energetic.
We are 100%. Na ni nyina ne said me hwe me nipadua sofa na de boa me mama hoden mama timi kobada ene tabia zanika heba mister
Tabia zanika heba misha. Ah, what do you want dance here cheme?
Ho dance de enya wonko me de dawure na ato so. Na media tran nipa mpempem. Tabia zanika heba mister. Ma to ne din nyame sa wonoma emenkwamu a ewo nipadua no mu a ye fra mu asojafo eye wide blasters na hoden enti nipadua nya hoden sonko kutia yare ahodo bebre enti wonta nyare enti na da me ye strong no eye general well-being of the body enti ye adwuma ewo nipadua na kwa no mu ba bia
Me am to me who and yourself busua bia here
eye busua nchemfa se obi de ne ho to tabia zanika heba misa so a eden se obeyare na nya na ewo ba bia tonto aduro bia hye ne nso se obi a onya mfinhye dumienu apemfo ene abatan a oma omanofo entime no bi FDA ahwehwe sa adwade nkratro mu agye atumi se ye
Open everywhere and anywhere I go. I
Fortune rice. It's me emu ediane biara. Wohiam so kakre pe. Emu no nkeka mbo. Na ne hwam ne dedi. Delicious. Said your mama tie no pepe. Ye the Fortune Emopa abejaso. Ghana mo e ma emu ediane nyina.
FDA agye ejedi nkratso ya to.
just like mom.
The ABS. You're listening to the Asaase Breakfast Show. The ABS, Asaase Breakfast Show.
Yes, you're through to the Asaase Breakfast Show. It's just gone 9, coming up to about 9:10 a.m. and we're now on that path, the smooth road to greatness, with our Road to Greatness interviewee in the studio this morning, somebody who just looks almost too young to be sitting in that chair. But indeed, despite the brief years that he spent on this earth, John Asogonnde is a man who has a story with more peaks and troughs to it to tell than most people 3 times his age. He is the author of a book that I hope we'll have the chance to talk a little bit about, his memoir, Unchained, Embracing Purpose Beyond Addiction. And one of the reasons we were attracted to it is not only the amazing story that the man behind it has to tell, but also what it says about our young people in this country, their mental health, their state of affections, and the paths down which they may stray when they just need a sense of belonging. So John Asogonnde is our guest today on the Road to Greatness, and thanks for joining us very much in the studio, John.
Thank you so much, Nanaya. I love the way you pronounce my surname. You did a great job.
Well, I'm working. I'll keep on practicing at it, and perhaps more of which later. But what's in a name? Because of course your memoir tells the story of the interesting business, not of your surname, which is very distinctive, and I believe originates from what the area now known as Uti?
No, actually Upper East region.
Oh, from the Upper East region. Okay. So a very distinctive name, but your surname, your first name, John, actually was not your given name, was it?
It wasn't.
No. Well, you were called Ishmael. How does Ishmael become John?
Ishmael became John at the age of 6 when he was inspired by the late President Jerry John Rawlings. Yes, I saw the man and I was moved by his charisma and the hope he brought to my community then. And so I said I wanted to become like him, and immediately I dropped Ishmael and picked up John.
This was an actual visit that President Rawlings paid to your community there in the Upper East, which you can remember aged 6. What was it about that business that blew your mind?
Okay, so this was a very small community that was always very dull, quiet. But that day when we heard the president was coming to town, suddenly everybody became happy and everybody was just jubilating.
Well, what was the community? Tell us the name of the place.
KJB. So this was actually in the Oti region, because that's where I grew up. But we are originally from the Upper East region.
Okay.
So KJB is where I grew up, and it was quiet, dull. But this day in the year 2000, the president was visiting, and everybody was just happy.
With his full entourage.
Everything.
And you describe in your book very vividly, the vision of order that presented itself in the sleepy small town life that you're describing. It sounds very, very calm, very, very cozy and very idyllic. But these people dressed to the nines, pressed uniforms, the civilian entourage, all very smart and slick. And they seemed to offer a kind of vision of leadership and clarity, perhaps, that made you think, I want to be like that. And so you set off age 6 on a project to be called John. How did you go about this?
It was tricky because, everyone in the community knew me as John. Till date, when I go to KJB, some market women and, the older people, they still call me Ishmael because they were at my ordering. But I insisted. If you called me Ishmael, then I would get so furious, And so I told everybody I wanted to be called John. And gradually people picked it up, my teachers, family, friends, and it became my official name. I started writing it on all my books, everything I did was John.
Now, a determined child, therefore, also quite a scholarly one. You not only came from a calm, supportive, secure, communal environment. Your family environment sounds like it was very secure as well. Your father, a pastor. You're one of, is it 6 siblings?
Yes.
Where did you come in the order?
I'm second.
You're number 2.
Yeah.
So quite a senior position. And you lived up to the responsibility, it seemed, right from the start. A high-achieving student at school, pretty much straight A's. You were class prefect, I believe, and later on became, was it a deputy?
School prefect, yeah.
Deputy school prefect. So somebody to whom people could see that you had those natural leadership abilities and came from what seemed like a very secure and loving home environment. What was it that created the gap that started what seems like a trail of slightly delinquent behavior, starting with you, in effect, getting suspended from school?
Yeah, I believe it all will boil down to peer pressure or peer influence. I was very curious growing up, and so if I saw my friends doing something and I thought it was fun or I thought they were happy, I also wanted to try it and see exactly what it was all about. And so unfortunately or fortunately, I had friends that tried several things, and I was also interested. In the book I talk about how the addiction started. It actually just started with pornography.
Pornography?
Yes.
How did you get access to pornography?
Well, back then we didn't even have access to videos like we have now, but I think the first encounter was with the magazine, nude pictures in the magazine, and, it caught my attention. It was a friend that had it in the neighborhood, and we started looking at those images, then gradually evolved into the compact disc videos, and then later on internet, having access to all, these images and videos. So that's how it started, and that was a habit that was well hidden because, it doesn't really take a toll on your physical self as much as other drugs. And so I was addicted to this life, watching pornography, masturbating, etc.
Was it something you had to do every day?
Yeah, every day. Every single day.
Now, one of the things that is so extraordinary about this memoir of yours, Unchained, which you're kind enough to share a copy of with me yesterday, is how open and honest you are about your descriptions of this gradual kind of slow, slippery slope that you went down, and you're perfectly above board with it here, bright and early in the morning in the Asaase Breakfast Show studio, saying, yeah, it was pornography, and friends shared it. Clearly there was a group of boys who used to do this thing of swapping these materials with each other. Maybe the kind of thing that a teenager growing up would be curious about anyway. But for you describe it as something that was more than just a guilty pleasure to which you resort occasionally. There was a compulsion. You had to keep on going back to it.
Yeah.
What was it that kept on pushing you back in the direction of pornography?
I think it was the excitement. Growing up in a pastor's house as well, there are so many restrictions and so many things you don't have access to. So seeing your friends who are not from pastor's kids, who have the freedom to do whatever they wanted to do, seemed exciting. And so I believe the pornography was the only exit I had or the only way I could also express myself. And I believe that was what made me, get attracted to it that much.
And then from there, you had this business of a junket to Crobber Girls' School. Tell us a little bit about this incident. What year did it happen in, and what possessed you to think that you could take off for Crobber Girls?
Crobber Girls happened in the year 2012. Again, it was just youthful exuberance, I would say. We left school without exit, all the way from the Volta region to Krobo in the eastern region. And we didn't even care. We didn't bother that we were leaving school without permission. No one knows our whereabouts. And foolishly enough, we didn't even return the same day.
I was going to say, you thought nobody would notice your absence for longer than a day.
And that's very stupid, because we're very popular in school. So if we're not popular, perhaps nobody will even notice, but we're popular. So leaving school on a Friday, the fanfare was on a Saturday. At least if we returned that same Saturday, maybe it would have been okay. But we didn't return. We continued to Accra, kept on partying. It was in February, so I think it was the Valentine's season as well. So we came to Accra, continued the Valentine's, and then went back to school about 5 or 6 days later. So at this point, the headmaster had found out that we were not there, and we got the punishment for it. We were sacked.
That was it. Essentially, it looked like the end of your academic career.
It seemed so, and it was a big blow, because my dad was a pastor in that same town, and so everybody heard it. The pastor's kid has been sacked from school, and it was tough. It was tough, but God still made a way somehow.
Your mother was, of course, distraught at this. Her beautiful son. As you say, you're also a popular entity amongst your peers. We'll go into that in a little bit, but how did this affect your relationship with your parents directly?
I think they were very disappointed. My mom especially, she was heartbroken, but they didn't push me away. They actually accepted me back home. And my dad was the one who encouraged me to write a private exam. Even though I was sacked from school, I was nearing my final year in secondary school. So he encouraged me to write a private exam. I did, and I excelled. So I was admitted to the university. And so by the time my mates would graduate from the secondary school, I was already in level 100 in the university.
So it almost seems as if, without wishing to overinterpret, but your misbehavior actually hadn't led to any kind of, if anything, it had got you ahead of your pack of students.
Yeah.
That might have perhaps induced a little bit of a feeling in you that, well, I've got away with it. So, what's not to like? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you describe yourself as a child, as a young child, before you started this experimentation, as somebody who had a very deep belief. And almost you had a moment of revelation, I think, before the age of 10, where you could see all the distress that human beings might face, human beings actually being subject to the forces of hell, as you saw it, even though it was a celebratory occasion when you had this vision. So what was it, where were you at that point in time in relation to personal faith? You came from a Christian household, and clearly you had a deep grounding in a belief in a God. Where was the whole relationship with God at that time?
Yeah, so it was at the, I believe, outdooring ceremony of my younger sister, and at this party I saw everybody burning in hell, and I was sad. I started crying. My parents didn't get it. Like, it's a party, everybody's eating, drinking, why are you crying? And so I told them I saw everybody at the party burning in hellfire, including the newborn baby. That was very heartbreaking. And so a couple of months after that, I took to town, started a dawn broadcast. At 5 a.m. I would wake up with my friends, going all around screaming, "Repent, Jesus is coming soon."
Literally going around with your friends shouting in the streets. Repent.
Every morning before we go to school, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. we're in the streets. Repent, Jesus is coming soon. Repent, Jesus is coming soon. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, months turned into years, and Jesus never came. And so because I didn't really understand the essence of that message, that's where the drift started happening, because I was so consumed by the fact that he was coming soon, seeing everybody burning in hell like that. But he never came in the way I expected it. So that caused the drift, and unfortunately I found myself in these vices that I talk about.
Now, I can understand that. Some of us, when we were teenagers, thought that the world was going to end through nuclear war, and then the nuclear war never came. So it's like, okay, so what next? You might as well amuse yourself and party, right?
Right.
So for you, the partying started with experimentation with something you call Mary Jane. I'm very pleased to have been brought up to speed with the new with the new nickname, the new parlance, marijuana.
Yes.
Presumably a drug of choice amongst your peer group, because there must have been access to it to a certain extent. But how did the smoking thing start? And I know you also have a thing with alcohol. So which came first, the alcohol or the marijuana?
Alcohol came first. Okay. Alcohol came when I was still in secondary school, along with cigarettes. And marijuana later came in when I got to university. At this point I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted to do, because I had my own hostel, one in a room, and unlike the secondary school where your lecturers or your teachers are always on your case, here you had the freedom to do whatever you wanted to do. So that's where marijuana came in. And I think
but sorry, just pausing you a moment there, the alcohol thing, where did you find the money to buy the alcohol and the fags?
It was cheap, but I was privileged, I believe, and I was amongst people who had access to it. So, at parties, there was always alcohol. I probably didn't even have to pay for it,
It was just freely available. And what did you talk about the experience of smoking as in cigarettes, ordinary cigarettes, and the aura of cool that you thought it lent you. Alcohol, a different ball game altogether, because of the altering effects that it has on the mind. And your book is highly recommended by people in the Ghana Mental Health Authority, who talk about it being a very interesting insight into disordered states of mind and how they come about and how you can get beyond them. What was the alcohol doing for you? Some people take alcohol because they're shy and they find it helps them become more outgoing. You don't strike me as somebody who lacked confidence, and you were a popular person. You're good looking, you're sociable, you're friendly. What was the alcohol giving you that made you keep on going back to it?
It was actually that, I was quite shy.
You were quite shy.
Yeah, I was. And for the life I wanted to live, performing on stages, outgoing, being the life of the party, I needed the alcohol in my system to have that energy. So that was what alcohol did for me. I didn't even like the taste because it was, it's bitter if you've tried alcohol, but just the effect it gave me was nice. And that was what led me to it.
It took you out of yourself.
Yeah.
And made you a different person almost. You describe also having decided you wanted to live a life on stage at that point. What do you mean by a life on stage? Explain a little bit.
In secondary school, I was a rapper.
Oh gosh, a biology's man. Where's DJ Ray? You come and have you drop bars on bars.
Drop bars now. Yeah, but
you're a rapper.
Yeah, I was a rapper, so I was always performing on stages, and that life.
You liked the performing life. You wanted to be out there in the public gaze, and that was the drinking again a very sociable thing, or something that you just did to psych yourself up to go on stage?
Oh, it was just a sociable thing, where we called ourselves occasional drinkers, or we drink at parties, but eventually it became something you had to do, because without it you couldn't even feel yourself or be yourself. And that was more so the case for marijuana. when I became addicted to marijuana. I couldn't function without it. I couldn't be myself without it. And that was where I realized I was really addicted to these substances.
Again, with the marijuana, when you took it up, how did you first experiment with it? Or was it like a very easy transition from cigarettes to MJ?
It was quite easy, but I think what made it easy was also because prior to smoking marijuana, all the stories I heard about it was if you smoke, you go mad. If you smoke, you'd become useless or you'd become unruly. But here I was in school and I saw my mates smoking, and they looked cool. They seemed to be having fun. They were not going mad, So that I was intrigued by that, and decided to try it. And for some reason, I loved it. It became my drug of choice. I would smoke every day, and it gave me this sense of invisibility. It gave me this sense of control. I thought it opened my mind to a point that I didn't know even existed, and I thought it gave me some sort of calm or peace. But of course, I later found out it was just a mirage, and it became something I had to depend on to live, which I don't think it's supposed to be the case. You're not supposed to depend on any substance to live or to be yourself.
So the dependency, one thing, but you talk about the sense of power and ability and the opening up of the mind that it gave you. But there is, of course, a strong subcurrent of opinion in Ghana that is very much in favor of the recreational use of cannabis. There are some people who even believe that it expands the possibilities of the mind, and I don't know what it was like in your student clique when you started taking the drug, but there are some people who believe that the most brilliant students actually are the ones who take at least these so-called natural drugs. Was that the kind of prevailing opinion at the time you took it up? And what's your attitude to some of the arguments that actually say that depending on who you are, actually marijuana can work for you? Maybe it didn't work for you.
I think they've done a good PR job with that. Till date, people still believe if you smoke, you would excel in your books or you excel in school, but I don't think that's a fact. I'm yet to see anyone who smokes who really excels in their academic work. If anything at all, it derails you, it brings you back, and that was the case for me. I was a first class student in first year, but after getting hooked to marijuana, I became a second class lower.
At what stage in university did you get hooked?
By my second year. But I honestly believe that cannabis has its positive effects. The CBD oils and some of the chemicals in the plants are very helpful for so many different uses.
For medicinal use?
Yes, for medicinal use. But people that just want to smoke to get high try to justify that using the medicinal benefits. Meanwhile, that's not the case for them. It's not been prescribed by any doctor or any physician for them. Also with the legalization, I don't think Ghana is there yet. Just yesterday when it rained, the whole city flooded, and this has been happening for 10 consecutive years. I don't see us in position to be able to regularize this or put in the necessary structures in place, whereby when marijuana is legalized, we'll be able to make some benefits from it. At this point, if we legalize it, I believe it would be more harm than good, because the abuse will be inevitable. It could easily lead to young people abusing the drug without really understanding the extent to which it goes. And so I'm not of the school of thought that it should be legalized now. But yeah, for medicinal use and for industrial purposes like the you can make bags and all of those from the plants. We could explore that.
So the business case, the industrial use aside, but not for recreational use. But it seems like cannabis, and we'll get on to the irony of why you having been addicted to alcohol and cannabis is such an irony for you in your current state, because you have now become an award-winning businessman for something that is at the polar opposite, the polar end of the spectrum from these substances. But it was presumably like a cool social thing. How far did you... I shouldn't say fall, because that sounds judgmental, but how far did you go with the addiction to drugs? I'm aware of people who have done terrible things to their nearest and dearest because of their addiction. Did you ever get close to that, or were you always cushioned by your ability, for example, to finance your drug-taking habits, and so you never got to rock bottom?
Well, I got to rock bottom in terms of my mental state, but I never got to rock bottom in terms of finance, because I was privileged and I was able to finance my drug use, and even in the environment it was quite easily available. So I never got to rock bottom in that sense.
Sorry, explain about the environment you were in terms of availability.
Yeah, after school, I was working in the entertainment industry. I was a business manager for a record label. We also had a nightclub. So, whenever I went to the nightclub, I didn't even have to buy. It was right there on standby waiting for me. And the friends I kept, they always had access to it. So even if I didn't have money to afford it, a friend would have. So in that sense, I never got to the point where, I couldn't finance the habit.
So, hard to see how you move from an environment, a super cool, fast-moving, the kind of lifestyle that a lot of young people would aspire to, working in entertainment, lifestyle, the nightclub industry, connections with fashion. Look at how beautifully turned out you are today. One of these people who seem to have the life that young people would love to aspire to. What was it that triggered your hitting rock bottom? What made you feel, I can't do this any longer?
I became miserable. I felt empty. Nothing could bring me joy. Nothing could bring me satisfaction. We started smoking with just maybe one roll a day. At this point, I was smoking about 10 joints of weed in a single day.
10 joints a day.
Yeah, and still felt very empty, very miserable. And that's the case for a lot of people. And that's when they probably upgrade to a drug with higher potency. But
did you try harder drugs?
Tramadol, I tried tramadol. I tried crack once, and that's it. But the weed, I increased the number of joints I was smoking, because one joint couldn't do it. So in a day, I'll smoke up to 10 joints to feel the level of high I felt with one joint in the beginning. So at this point, I just realized nothing was bringing me that satisfaction. I wasn't filled with any purpose. I had this good job. As you've described, a lot of young people aspire to work in that kind of environment, having access to all the nightclubs, being around celebrities, red carpet events, lavish life. But I was not happy. I was just completely miserable. And so that was the point of my rock bottom, as I explained in the book.
And from that rock bottom, did you entirely as a self-motivating thing decide to pull yourself up, or was there one crucial thing that intervened, or crucial factors or people that intervened that helped you to take the step of saying, I'm going to leave this life behind, I'm going to continue taking interest in lifestyle, but I'm going to abandon this thing, which is, it sounds like it formed your entire universe, your social life, your work life, your source of income, your everything. How do you move away from that as a young person?
God did. It's as simple as that. I came across a sermon by Dr. Mensa Otabil. It was
of ICGC.
Yes, ICGC. I was in my room. I was actually just smoking, looking through music videos on YouTube, and then the sermon popped up out of nowhere, stepping out from your prison. And the title caught my attention because my life at that point was like I was in prison. Nothing was working out for me. And so I decided to listen to him. And he talked about Peter in the Bible when he was imprisoned. God didn't just go and pluck him out of the prison. God sent an angel to tell Peter to get up, to put on his clothes, to put on his sandals, and to walk out of the prison. The only thing God did was to open the doors of the prison. But Peter had to take a step and walk out of that prison. And so immediately I understood that the place I found myself, this misery I found myself in, if anything was going to change, I had to consciously take efforts to step out of the situation I found myself in. But I didn't just quit smoking then, but the seed was sown. And so I kept listening to him, and then later to Dr. Miles Monroe of blessed memory as well. And so my mind was being transformed. My mind was being renewed. A couple of months down the line, a tragic incident happened that really just turned everything around. And so there was this guy I followed on social media. He had it all, traveling in private jets, driving the flashiest cars. And I thought he had the best life. I wanted to be like him, But one day I go on social media and then I find out that this guy jumped from the 10th floor of his penthouse in Miami and he killed himself. So that was where the verse hit me. For what shall it profit a man to gain the whole world and yet lose his soul? This guy that I thought had it all just killed himself like that in an instant. And so I immediately realized that you can't keep on going this way, because this is the same path you're towing, and you don't have happiness, you don't have any satisfaction, you don't have any fulfillment. And so if you keep going down like this, you probably end up like that as well. So that was the point of my surrender. I gave my life to Christ and everything turned around.
Did you have to seek professional help in making the transition out of your old daily habits to where you are now?
I didn't. Everything I did, God inspired. But looking back, I realized that every single thing I did is exactly what the professionals prescribe. And so immediately after I gave my life to Christ, I was inspired to go on a fast. I was inspired to put in good habits. So I started reading more. I started walking. I started exercising. I started replacing all my bad habits with good ones. And I found out that this is exactly the same things professionals would prescribe to you, to replace bad habits with good ones. So I didn't seek professional help. God, in His own wisdom, guided me throughout, even the change of environment. So I had to step out of the environment I was working in, the entertainment industry. I had to leave that job behind. It was a big sacrifice I had to make, with this job providing me with my accommodation, salary, and everything. But I had to leave it behind. My friends, some of my very good friends that I had, a tight bond with, I had to walk away from them, and sort of put boundaries in place. So I did these things, and then, by God's grace, I was able to overcome all the vices I had.
A real tale of not quite a Damascene conversion, but certainly a very self-willed movement away from your old life. And part of the things one of the main things that you were inspired to do was to continue thinking. You wanted to work with young people, you want to encourage young people and create ways of socializing for them that didn't involve necessarily having to resort to some of these substances. So you go from being somebody who's addicted to alcohol to somebody who becomes an award-winning owner proprietor of the Eden Bar. here in Accra, which is a non-alcoholic, and I presume strictly non-alcohol providing bar, where you aim to provide social spaces, places where people can interact without having to resort to alcohol. Did you do it simply on the belief that if you set up the bar, people would come, or did you already know that there were people out there who were just dying for those kinds of spaces to socialize in?
I did it for myself, and then later found out that there were people out there that were seeking for the same thing. You know, after I had given my life to Christ and walked away from the world, I couldn't go to certain places anymore. You know, you go to the bar and sometimes you tell the bartender you wanted a non-alcoholic cocktail, and they'll insist, oh, let me put something small inside for you. Tell you something small, you're a man, you know. And it became troubling, and so I realized if it's not out there, then I'll create one myself. And so that was how the vision started. But then I came to find out that there are so many people out there who didn't want to drink, but they couldn't also find a safe space like that. You know, some of them even not because of their faith, but just because of their health, their jobs, or, you know, just lifestyle choices. You know, and so Eden Bar has become that safe space for people who don't want to drink, and also a place for young people to avoid the peer influence and peer pressure, because young people will still want to go out, young people still want to have fun. And so Eden Bar, we've been able to create that fun environment with our events like the karaoke nights, the game nights, you know, live band, so many different, you know, activities that keeps the place lively, but then you don't have to drink alcohol. And that's one of our slogans says, alcohol doesn't have a monopoly over fun. You don't need to be drunk to have fun. You can be sober and still be happy.
So you were the winner last year of the World Alcohol Free Awards first Uplift Award for your work with the bar, which came with an interesting package, I think, of advice and support from the originators of the award. I wanted to ask you, apart from being a writer of choice, because apart from Unchained, which we've got here, I'd highly recommend a copy of if you're lucky enough to lay your hands on it, subtitle Embracing Purpose Beyond Addiction, as we said, and also previously your book on breaking free from Mary Jane. You're also, for that, the winner of the Literary Excellence Award, which you won in 2019, and the Youth Excellence Awards here in Ghana. It seems you've got many new bows to your guitar, shall we say now. Where next? Where next for John Asogonnde?
Where next? Wherever God leads me. Everything I do has been the handiwork of God. From my first book to establishing Eden Bar to this next one. But off the top of my head, some of the things I believe I want to do is make movies. I love watching movies, and these days it seems every movie you watch there is a particular agenda to project certain lifestyles and certain ideologies that doesn't sit well with me. And so I'm not the type to complain. If I see a problem, I try to fix it. And so I would love to make movies that can also, you know, send out the sort of message I would want the young people to have, or the sort of ideologies I believe, you know, is the right path to toe. So yeah, definitely going to work on making some movies.
Well, the sky's the limit, but you possibly heard him here first if you haven't been already somebody who had read his books or heard about the work that he does with the Full Gospel Men's Fellowship, which he's very involved in. But our great thanks to you, John Asogonnde, for joining us here on the Asaase Breakfast Show, for telling us about that story of your road to greatness. We hope you'll come back again to refresh us on your next installment in the story.
Thank you. This was lovely. Thank you so much.
But now to our Health Today segment of the program, and we're joined by our regular friend, Dr. Teddy Tutime, a pediatric surgeon who's been back. We enjoyed our first stint with him last week, talking about